college biology. The fact that I get to continually do research and teach at the same time is amazing to me. I never tire of learning or teaching. At Ball State, we're encouraged to work closely with students. That's the best part of all. There's nothing better than seeing a student grow.
Dr. Carolyn Vann is a respected professor and DNA researcher. Academic excellence at Ball State University.
Oh, what a difference you make in my life. Daylight come and me want go home.
And welcome where the land and sea intertwine. For the next 90 minutes, we will be learning about sea turtles, the marine reptiles that live in the oceans. My name is Dottie, and I work at the Smithsonian Institution's Smithsonian Environmental Research Center. I have a lot of guests who are here with me today, and first we'd like to introduce...
Hi, I'm Will Nielsen from Richfield Middle School in Minnesota. I'd like to say hello to all my friends watching, and we'd also like to welcome Blessed Trinity. Oops.
And I also have with me
Kevin David from Dangriga Town. Go to school at Christ the King School.
So Kevin lives here in Belize, and Kevin is going to help introduce us to this beautiful country of Belize. This is a live, interactive, electronic field trip, and for it to be interactive, we need your help. We need you to call in with your questions or send in your email questions. Your phone calls will be answered here on the island by satellite phone, and your emails will be answered by our bank of experts around the world. For your phone calls to work, we need you to do a couple things. You'll need to step away from your television set while you're making your phone call, and if you can, turn down the volume on your TV set. That will help reduce any feedback. Then you'll go ahead ahead and ask your question, and when you're done with your question, hang up the phone. You'll then turn back the volume on the TV, and you'll hear the answer to your question through your television, not through the phone. Like I said, these are satellite phones that we are using here, so sometimes you might get disconnected. If that happens, just try calling back or send in your question by an email. Periodically throughout the show, you're going to see the phone number and the email address at the bottom of your screen. We want to hear your questions about sea turtles, so please feel free to give us a call or send in an email. This electronic field trip has been produced by the Smithsonian Institution, Smithsonian Environmental Research Center, and Ball State University's Insight Distance Learning. Our sponsor is Best Buy Children's Foundation. We'd also like to thank the Apple Learning Interchange for showing our webcast of this electronic field trip. I mentioned the fact that we are in Belize, and we had to come a long way to get here. Will's come all the way from Minnesota. So, Will, can you tell us exactly where we are right now?
Okay, well, Belize is located in Central America. It's in between North and South America, and it's just south of Mexico.
Great, so you'll see on your screen a map of Belize. It's a small country in Central America, as Will said. Belize is known for the hundreds of islands that line its coast, and some of these islands will form a ring or a chain. A chain of islands is called an atoll, and we are on the Turnef Atoll right now. Again, you can see that atoll on the map. It's about 35 miles east off the coast of Belize City. What's special about the Turnef Atoll is that there is a small island in that atoll called Calabash Key. Calabash Key is the field station for the University of Belize. Here they have their Institute of Marine Studies. And we've been lucky enough to stay at this field station for the last 10 days. Scientists from around the world can come here and do their research. One of the scientists who comes here is Dr. Candy Feller, who's from the Smithsonian Environmental Research Center. She studies mangroves, the trees that live in the tropical intertidal area here. And if you saw us a couple days ago, we did an electronic field trip about that. In order to be able to show you the most of Belize, we've also brought an underwater camera with us so we can see the underwater marine habitat that is right behind me. To introduce our underwater cameraman, I'd like to go to Mary Dell Donnelly, who is a sea turtle scientist at the Ocean Conservancy.
Hello, Dottie. I'm standing here with two marine biologists, Steve Giordano from Annapolis, Maryland, and Mark Galloway from Tallahassee, Florida. During our broadcast today, Steve and Mark will be in the water, providing us with live footage of the wonderful things under the sea. We can expect to see seagrass beds, marine algae, and perhaps some very interesting fish. Back to you, Dottie.
I have two more friends who have joined me. Here we have
Lincoln McSweeney from Gales Point, Manatee, Gales Point Wildlife Sanctuary Community.
And also we have
Kevin Anjin from Gales Point, Manatee, local biologist.
Great, and Kevin and Lincoln, I understand that we have a phone call already. We have Liz on the line. Liz, can you go ahead with your question? Go ahead with your question, Liz. Okay, we've lost Liz. Remember, we're using satellite phones here on this island, so if you get disconnected, you'll want to call back. I know there are lots of students who are watching us, students at Richfield Middle School, students at Central Middle School, Davidsonville Elementary, and we have a lot of friends in North Carolina watching us at the North Carolina Natural Sciences Museum. So again, throughout the show, see the number and the email address at the bottom of your screen. Like we were talking about with Will had to come a long way from Minnesota to get here to Belize, and we'd like to show you a video of how we got here. that's how we got to Calabash Key all the way from the United States. We now have another phone call we'd like to get. We have Sarah from New Jersey on the line. Sarah, please go ahead with your question. Sarah, are you there?
Why can't sea turtles pull their head and flippers into their shell?
Sarah wants to know why sea turtles can't pull their head into their shell. That's a very good question, Sarah, and we've been talking about that here with our students. Will, why don't you show us this shell? What kind of shell do you have here?
This shell belongs to a box turtle.
Okay, so this is the shell of a box turtle, and where do box turtles live?
Mainly on land.
They live on land, okay, and what is the shape of the shell?
It's very dome-like.
It's very rounded, very heavy and very rounded. Now let's look at Kevin. Kevin, can you show everybody at home this turtle? What kind of turtle is this?
This is a hawksbill turtle.
This is a hawksbill. So this is a sea turtle. Now, sea turtles are different from other turtles in a couple special ways. One of them is, look at the shell. What is the shape of this shell?
Well, it's flat.
It's much more flat, so it's streamlined so the turtles can swim in the water. So one of the adaptations of sea turtles from other turtles is that they have a reduced shell, so they're less heavy in the water and they can swim faster through the water. But in order to have this lighter shell, they've had to give up the ability to pull their head into their shell. So instead, they have a very thick neck, and they have a head that has a special hard covering called scutes on top of the head to protect their head, even though they can't pull it into their shell. All right, we have Liz back on the line. Liz, go ahead with your question.
Hi, Dottie. This is Liz from the museum. We were wondering if any of the students in Belize have actually seen a sea turtle in the wild, and if they'd be willing to tell us a little bit about their encounters. Thanks.
Liz wants to know if anybody here, one of our students from Belize, have actually seen a sea turtle. Kevin, you're from Belize, right? Yes, tell us again where you're from.
I'm from Mangrove.
Have you ever seen a sea turtle?
Yes, Mom.
Do you know what kind it was?
No.
No, because there
No idea.
are 4 different kinds of sea turtles that are here in Belize, so it could have been one of any of the 4 kinds. What was the turtle doing when you saw it?
Well, it came up for air.
So Kevin saw it swimming in the water. One of the characteristics of sea turtles and turtles in general is that they breathe air. So what do they use to breathe air?
The lungs.
They use lungs. They don't have gills. So Kevin has seen the turtles come up in the water to get a big breath of air. We also have some other students who have seen sea turtles come up on the beach to lay their eggs. And while we've been here on Calabash, our students went out to find sea turtles. Did you find anything?
Only we saw turtle tracks.
They saw the tracks of the turtles in the sand, but not actually the sea turtles. You got to be very lucky to see a sea turtle. And I'm wearing my lucky turtle hat. Every time I wear this hat, I see a turtle. So hopefully we can see one. Okay, we have another question on the line. Jeff from California. Go ahead with your question, Jeff. Okay, we've lost Jeff, so please feel free to call back or send in an email. Now, we've started talking about turtles versus sea turtles, but Will, what kind of animal is a turtle?
Turtles are reptiles.
Turtles are reptiles, and what makes an animal a reptile?
They have scales, they lay eggs, and they're cold-blooded.
What does it mean to be cold-blooded?
Their body temperature is regulated by their environment.
Right, if you look on your screen, you'll see a graphic that has the characteristics of a reptile. Reptiles are cold-blooded animals. Most of them lay eggs to reproduce. Their skin has scales on it, and those scales help keep them from drying out, unlike amphibians. Also, sea turtles and all reptiles have a backbone, so they are vertebrates. And with the turtles, their backbone is attached to the inside of their shell. So their backbone is attached to their shell, and their ribs are attached to their shell. So can a turtle come out of its shell?
No, it can't.
No, it can't. All right, and we've also said that reptiles, including the turtles, they breathe air. They don't have gills. They don't breathe through their skin like amphibians, like frogs do. So that's what a reptile is. What makes a turtle different from any kind of other reptile?
It has a protective shell.
All right, the turtles, their scales have actually been adapted into a hard, bony shell. And you can see this here with this box turtle. If you look at the shell, you'll see the white parts. That's the actual bone layers of the shell. Then on top of the shell, you have a protective covering that are called scutes. And these scutes are made out of the same material as your fingernails. These scutes help provide protection to the shell, and they also have different colorings and different markings and different patterns. And that's how turtle biologists can tell turtles apart. And if you look at the sea turtle, it's the same situation here, where you have the shell with the scutes on top of the shell. Kevin, do you know what the top of the shell is called?
Scutes?
The scutes are on top. What is this whole top called? It's called the carapace, right? So Kevin will show you the carapace of the shell. That's the top of the shell. And then if we can get Will to show you the bottom of the shell, which is the plastron. And the plastron and the carapace are hinged together. And like we said, turtles can't come out of their shells. They are attached to the inside of their shell. We have another phone call. Cameron is on the line. Cameron, can you go ahead with your question?
How many species of sea turtles are there?
Cameron wants to know how many species of sea turtles there are. And that's great, Cameron. Let's go ahead and start talking about the different kinds of sea turtles. There are 8 species of sea turtles. Although some scientists think there are only 7. It depends on who you ask. There's a debate about it. But we're going to say that there are 8 species of sea turtles. There are 4 species that are found here in Belize. Kevin, can you name some of the sea turtles that are here in Belize?
Hawksbill, loggerhead, green turtle, and
the leatherback.
Yeah, and the leatherback.
Right. All right, we have Christine on the line. Christine, can you go ahead with your question? Christina, are you there?
Why do they live where, yes. Why do they live where they do?
Christina wants to know why sea turtles live where they do. Sea turtles are turtles that are specially adapted to the marine environment. So these turtles have evolved from land turtles. They have then gone back to the ocean and they live in the ocean. The sea turtles have special adaptations that allow them to live there. Their flippers and their streamlined shell, for example. Sea turtles, we also said, are cold-blooded. And so you will find sea turtles in tropical and temperate environments. They can't live in places where it's really cold. The leatherback sea turtle is the sea turtle that can go into the coldest of waters, but still it can't live in the Arctic or the Antarctic. They can dive down deep and be in cooler waters, but still they must return back to the warmer waters. So really it's the fact that reptiles are cold-blooded that determines what temperature of the water they can live in. We have Kelly from Michigan on the line.
Hi, what is the scientific name for the sea turtle?
Kelly wants to know what the scientific name for the sea turtles are. Let's start talking about the 8 species of sea turtles, and we can talk about it then. There are 4, I said, that are here in Belize, and Kevin named them. The first one we'll talk about is the loggerhead. That is called Caretta caretta. The loggerhead is found in temperate and tropical waters. It has very strong jaws, and it uses these strong jaws to catch crabs and clams and other hard-shell animals for it to eat. Another sea turtle that you will find here in Belize is the hawksbill. That's Ereticales imbricata. That is what the hawksbill is. The hawksbill is what Kevin has here. This is sort of a youngster sea turtle. It's probably, a youngster like Kevin is here, or some of our younger viewers who are watching us. Hawksbills are known for their beautiful shells. Whenever you hear about tortoise shell, that has come from the shell of a hawksbill sea turtle. And hawksbills have been hunted for their shell. And some scientists think that there are more dead hawksbills that have been collected for their shell than there are live hawksbills that are in the water. Hawksbills live on coral reefs and they will eat sponges there. Another sea turtle that we have here in Belize is the green sea turtle. That's Chelonia mitis. Chelonia mitis, the green sea turtle, is the only turtle that is an herbivore. And Will can explain to you what an herbivore is.
Yeah, an herbivore is an animal that eats only plants.
So the green sea turtle is eating turtle grass and other algae that is around the turtle grass. The fourth kind of sea turtle that you find here in Belize is the leatherback. That's Dermocheles corycea. And the leatherback is the largest of all sea turtles, the largest of all turtles. And you will find the leatherback only very rarely here in Belize. They get to be very big, anywhere from maybe 800 to 1,800 pounds. The largest leatherback that was ever found was 2,000 pounds, if you can believe that. And these sea turtles eat nothing but jellyfish. They eat jellyfish that they find in the water. If you can imagine an animal that is that big, that is eating nothing but an animal that is made out of water. We have Kevin from Minnesota on the line. Kevin, can you go ahead? Kevin, go ahead with your question.
Hello? Yeah, I want to know, why are sea turtles like endangered species?
Kevin wants to know why sea turtles are an endangered species. We've talked about the fact that there are 8 species of sea turtles, and all of them, except for the Australian flatback, are either endangered or threatened. And some scientists think that the reason the flatback has not been designated endangered, has not been designated threatened, is because we don't have enough information about them. But sea turtles are endangered or threatened for many reasons. Sea turtles have been around since the time before dinosaurs. They survived the extinction that the dinosaurs did not. There are lots of predators on sea turtles, lots of natural predators. But it used to be that a sea turtle's hard shell was the only kind of protection it needed. But because of the influence of people, of humans, in the habitats of sea turtles have become, their numbers have declined. Development of the beach, loss of habitat, or the degradation, the destruction of their habitat. These are very important things that will cause the decline of sea turtles. Also, sea turtles have been hunted around the world. They've been hunted for their shell, like for the hawksbill. They've been hunted for their meat. They've been hunted for their eggs. In some places in the world, the eggs are considered delicacies. And in some places, there were so many sea turtle eggs on one beach that the eggs would be caught and they'd be carried out in these large carts. So when you are killing that many turtles, there aren't enough for them to reproduce. And sea turtles live a long time. They reproduce very slowly. So all of these pressures on these sea turtles and their long development has caused them to become endangered and threatened in most parts of the world. Let's talk about the 4 species of sea turtles that are remaining. The Kemp's Ridley, that is a sea turtle that is a conservation success story. And the Kemp's Ridley, it is found in the Gulf of Mexico. It is found in Texas, it's found in Louisiana, it's also found in Mexico. And there's a very famous beach in Mexico, Rancho Nuevo, where 50 years ago we used to have 40,000 Kemp's Ridleys come up onto the beach and reproduce. There'd be so many female turtles on the beach that they'd be crawling over each other and they'd be digging up each other's eggs. Then, because of being caught in shrimp nets and other fishing gear, those turtles started to decline. They were also, these are the turtles that were harvested for their eggs. Like I said, the eggs were being carried out on carts. And the numbers declined all the way to 200. In the last several decades, as we have been trying to protect the sea turtles in their habitats, the numbers have increased to 2,000. And with more protection, we'll be able to get the numbers even higher. The olive ridley is the sea turtle that is the most abundant throughout the world. And you find very large groups or arbotas of olive ridleys in places like India. The next sea turtle we'll talk about is the black sea turtle, and this is the turtle that some scientists wouldn't classify as its own species. The black sea turtle, which is Chelonia mitis agassiz, that is very closely related to the green sea turtle, and some scientists think that the green sea turtle and the black sea turtle are really the same species. Then the final sea turtle that we will talk about is one I mentioned already, the Australian flatback, and that is found only in Australia. And it hasn't been designated endangered or threatened yet because it's being so well protected in Australia that we're hoping it doesn't need to be classified as threatened. So those are the 8 different kinds of sea turtles, the 4 that you would find in Belize. Now, we've talked a little bit about what is a reptile, what is a turtle, and what is a sea turtle. Let's look at a video now of a loggerhead sea turtle that was caught in Florida in the Indian River Lagoon and find out what makes a sea turtle a sea turtle.
Okay, this is a juvenile loggerhead that was just caught out of the Indian River. You can see the top of the shell here. This is what's called the carapace. The bottom of the shell is called the plastron. Over. Okay. And you can see on the shell these barnacles that have attached themselves, and you can see little amphipods, little tiny shrimp-like animals that are crawling around as well on the shell. Some more barnacles on the head here. Loggerheads have big heads and sort of a beak-like mouth. Very strong front flippers. When they're swimming in the water, it almost looks like they're flying. And then the hind flippers back here. These sea turtles can't pull their heads back into their shell like a lot of turtles on land can do. You see the very strong, powerful front flippers that make them sort of awkward up on land, but in the water they're very powerful. When they're swimming, it almost looks like they're flying through the water.
You can hear the labored breathing. Since sea turtles are vertebrates, animals with a backbone, they have lungs, they don't have gills, so they have to breathe. They breathe oxygen just like we do. So they swim below the surface and then have to rise periodically to take a breath.
So those are the parts of a sea turtle. What makes a sea turtle different from other kinds of turtles? Mary Dell Donnelly has joined me. We want to answer some more of your questions. We have Samantha on the line. Samantha, can you go ahead with your question?
I wanted to know how long a sea turtle can stay under the water from time to time.
Samantha wants to know how long sea turtles can stay underwater. And Samantha, the answer to your question is it depends on what the sea turtle is doing. Remember we said that sea turtles are air breathers like all reptiles. So they eventually have to come back up to the surface to take a breath of air. If the sea turtle is swimming around very quickly in the water, it's going to need to come up sooner to get a breath of air. Usually, in general, a sea turtle will come up every few minutes to take a big breath of air. If a sea turtle is resting underwater, though, it can stay underwater for several hours. And we talked about sea turtles in shrimp nets. When the turtles get caught in these shrimp nets, they drown because they can't get out of the net to get up to the surface to get a breath of air. And so in some places, there are laws that say that fishermen have to pull their nets up after a certain amount of time, after about 50 minutes, and that way they can get the turtles out of the nets and the turtles can get air before they drown. All right, we have another phone call. Our phone call is from Michigan. Tara, are you there?
Yeah.
Go ahead with your question.
What is the predator or prey of the sea turtle?
Tara wants to know about sea turtle predators and sea turtle prey. So what are some of the predators that you have seen of sea turtles, Mary Dell?
Well, on the nesting beach we have a variety of predators, everything from ants to raccoons, skunks, wild dogs, wild pigs, and in the water there can be a variety of predators as well. A number of fish like to eat small hatchlings, and also they will be eating larger turtles as well. From the air we also have birds. Frigate birds are very well-known predators of sea turtles.
We have Kaylin from Michigan on the line. Kaylin, can you go ahead with your question?
What percent of the sea turtles that are born are living, that don't die when they're born?
Kaylin has a very good question. Kaylin wants to know what percentage of sea turtles that actually hatch from the eggs survive?
Scientists have been trying to answer this question probably for 40 years since they've been studying sea turtles. The number that we're working with these days is that about 1 turtle in 1,000 eggs will survive to adulthood and reproduce.
Doesn't sound like very good odds, but remember that sea turtles have been around since before the dinosaurs, and so their life cycle has worked for them throughout millions of years. We'd like to check in with our underwater camera. We had a question about the prey of sea turtles. we should be able to see the sea turtle, the seagrass beds that are just off the coast of here. And again, green sea turtles are the ones, are most likely ones you would find in there, feeding on the turtle grass and also feeding on the marine algae there. We talked about loggerheads eating crabs and other hard-shelled animals, hawksbills that you would find on the coral reef eating the sponges that are there, leatherbacks eating things like jellyfish. All right, now what we'd like to do is we'd like to talk about how sea turtles reproduce, how they lay their eggs. We mentioned that as a characteristic of reptiles. To do that, we'd like to show you a video of a loggerhead sea turtle laying her eggs on the beach in Florida. And to describe what you're seeing, we have Lincoln McSweeney.
The turtle you're looking at is an oxbill turtle. This mother turtle had left this nesting site 20 or 30 years ago as a baby and is now returning to lay her eggs. She will deposit about 100 or more eggs in a clutch, about 12 to 18 inches deep in the sand. If not disturbed, they will hatch in 59 to 62 days. After clutching the baby turtle will leave the area, and chances are they won't be back for the next 30 years, and they will repeat this cycle all over again. They have done this for thousands of years, and every year we keep looking out for our turtle. After burying these eggs, you'll never see this turtle again, as I said, for 30 years. We considered our turtle to be a part of our culture, and that's why we are doing everything in our power to protect our turtle, one of this area natural. This is, as we can look now, we'll see he's burying the eggs. Such a beautiful animal.
Right, so that's the process of a loggerhead sea turtle laying her eggs, but that's a very complicated process. Let's talk about the life cycle of sea turtles. We talked about the 8 different kinds, but they all have sort of a generalized life cycle that they go through. We want to show you a diagram of that, and let's start with sea turtles mating. The males and the females move to their breeding grounds, and offshore they mate. Then, after about 2 weeks, the female will come up on the beach and she will then lay her eggs. The males never leave the water, only the females do. So the females must come up on the beach and dig their nests to lay their eggs. Now remember, these sea turtles are adapted for a life in the oceans. They are not adapted for walking around on the land. So to do this is very cumbersome, very hard for them to do. I'd like to have some of our students help us do this. If I can get Spencer and if I can get Janina to come over here with Kevin, can you guys come over here with me? And what I'd like you guys to do is dig some sea turtle nests for us, okay? I want you guys to pretend that you're mother sea turtles, all right? Okay, so the first thing we want to talk to you about is, remember the flippers. Sea turtles have modified flippers. It's almost like a hand in a glove. So if I can get Janina, can you put one glove on? And Spencer, why don't you put a glove on? And Kevin, you can pretend your hands are in a glove, okay? So the first thing the female has to do is dig a body pit. This is a place for her to lay her weight. Remember, this sea turtle is 100 pounds, maybe it's 1,000 pounds. She may feel very light in the seawater, but she's very heavy on the land. So first thing is dig a body pit. So Kevin, can you show us how you would do that? And everybody else go ahead. Spencer and Janina. So she needs to dig a hole. While our students are doing that, let's go to Mary Dell and talk more about the nest that the sea turtle is going to lay.
Last night I came out to the beach and I dug a loggerhead nest and I put ping pong balls in it. Sea turtle eggs look very much like ping pong balls. My group is going to dig down to show you how far down the top of a sea turtle nest is. Okay, start digging. Now, when sea turtles are nesting, Ian, do sea turtle females nest every year? No, they don't nest every year. Taylor, when sea turtle females are nesting in a season, the year for them to come in, how many times in a season do they nest?
They nest about 3 to 6 nests.
Yeah, that's right.
About 3 to
So
6
that
nests.
requires a great deal of energy. Now, when a female comes on shore, she is on the land for about 2 hours. She digs a body pit, she makes a very beautiful egg chamber, and then she starts to lay her eggs. Now, as you can see, this is fairly far down, and that would be the top of the nest. The bottom of the nest is about 12 inches deeper. After she's finished laying her eggs, she covers it up, she packs down the sand, and then she moves around the site to disguise where she has been. Back to Dottie.
All right, so we've talked about the sea turtle nest. Our students here have dug their body pits, and now they're starting to dig their nest as well. Kevin and Spencer and Janine are simulating how the sea turtle uses her hind flippers to scoop out a pear-shaped hole, and then she deposits her eggs. So Spencer, why don't you take these eggs? These are actually ping pong balls, and that's about the size of a sea turtle egg. And why don't you place those in your nest? Usually, sea turtles lay about 100 to 120 eggs. It depends on how large the turtle is and what species she is. But Spencer is laying his eggs in his nest. And while Spencer's doing that, I'd like to hear from Paul from Maryland. Please go ahead with your question.
Do sea turtles communicate with each other?
Paul wants to know if sea turtles communicate with each other. Sea turtles are really solitary animals. They go out into the oceans and then they are by themselves. And they only come together when they're in their feeding grounds, or they come together when they are mating. But are sea turtles able to talk to each other, Mary Dell?
I would say from what I know about sea turtle behavior, they're not communicating in any major way. But I think that sometimes if you watch a group of them together, you'll know that there's some kind of communication. But for us right now, the trick is to figure out exactly what they're doing.
It's interesting to think about what two sea turtles would say to each other if we could understand what they were saying. We have Dory from Maine on the line. Dory, please go ahead with your question.
Okay. Hi, Dottie. How do sea turtles know where to return to lay the eggs?
Dory has an excellent question. Dory wants to know how sea turtles know where to return to their nest, and we're going to be talking about that in our next section. We've talked, Dory, about the sea turtles migrating through their habitats, moving from one place to another. And sea turtles use different cues to be able to find their way. The hatchlings use light of the moon on the ocean to be able to find their way at night to the ocean. Then they use the waves to find their way out to the open ocean. And then scientists think once they're in the open ocean that they use an internal compass to be able to find their way around, to make a map in their heads of where they're going and how to come back. And we're going to talk about that more in the next segment. We have Walker from North Carolina on the phone. Please go ahead with your question.
Hi, this is Liz calling for Walker. He wants to know the largest sea turtle here on the North Carolina coast. Thanks.
Walker wants to know what the largest sea turtle is in North Carolina. We've talked about leatherbacks being the largest sea turtle of all. There aren't leatherbacks that are nesting in North Carolina. They do nest in Tortuguero, Costa Rica, which is here in Central America, and some do nest in Florida. What would be the largest sea turtle you would see in North Carolina, Mary Dell?
The largest one that you would see in the waters are the leatherbacks, because they do get into the waters of North Carolina. And as far as nesting is concerned, you're going to see a lot of loggerheads in North Carolina. If you haven't done that yet, you should try to get to a sea turtle nesting beach this summer.
We have Katie from Indiana on the line. Katie, please go ahead with your question.
I wanted to know how many eggs they can lay at a time, but you already answered that, so I wanted to know how long they could live.
Okay, I think Katie's asking how many eggs get laid in a nest and then how long do they live. A female sea turtle usually lays around 100 to 120 eggs. It depends on what kind of turtle she is, what kind of species of turtle she is, but usually it's around 100 eggs. and those eggs then incubate in the sand. So we have had our mother turtles, Spencer and Kevin and Janina, have buried their eggs in the sand, and those eggs will stay buried for about 2 months while the eggs incubate inside the sand. But one thing about sea turtles is that they are different from other animals like birds who lay eggs, and that the mothers don't stay with the eggs. They lay the eggs, let them incubate in the sand, and then the mothers return to the sea. So after about 2 months, then those hatchlings will emerge from their nest. They will come out on the beach, and they will need to crawl back towards the ocean and get into the ocean. We were here back in August, and we were lucky enough to see hatchlings coming out of a nest and crawling to the ocean. So let's take a look at a video of that. So those are loggerhead hatchlings that emerged from their nest and crawled towards the ocean. Once they get in the ocean, the sea turtles begin what's called their swim frenzy. They start swimming as fast as they can, as far as they can. They want to get out into the open ocean. Once they get out into the open ocean, loggerheads in particular are swimming into the Sargasso Sea. And in the Sargasso Sea are warm waters, but there are also large mats of floating algae. And this algae is called sargassum. And the hatchlings will then hide inside these rafts of sargassum. It will provide them protection, and it will also provide them with food. Let's look underwater and see if we can see any of this sargassum that might be floating around in the water. Again, this is where the hatchlings are going to hide and find food. And they're going to stay in these sargassum seabeds. We're really not sure. It could be a year, it could be 5 years, it could be a little more than that. These years are what are called the lost years, where we don't know exactly where the turtles are going or exactly what they're doing. We need more turtle biologists out there studying these turtles as they are hatchlings in the open ocean. And you can see an illustration of what a sea turtle would look like if it was floating in a mat of the sargassum. Once the sea turtle gets big enough, it then leaves these sargassum seabeds and they move to their juvenile feeding grounds. And so the juveniles then come together all in one place and they continue feeding, they continue growing. We talked about sea turtles being very slow to develop, so it takes many years of going through all of these different stages. After the juveniles have grown and reached sexual maturity, they've then become adults. And these adults then move to separate feeding grounds. The adults and the juveniles are in different feeding grounds in most places. So the adults are now in their adult feeding grounds, and then when it's the time of year for them to move to their breeding grounds, they all go to the beach where they initially came from as hatchlings to reproduce and to begin the cycle all over again. So this is the life cycle, the generalized life cycle of a sea turtle, and we're going to show you a demonstration of how the sea turtles need to get down the beach into the water. We're going to begin setting up for our Turtle Hurdles game, so if you are going to be participating along with us in your classroom, go ahead and get set up. But right now we have a question from Anthony on the line. Anthony, are you there?
Yeah, how do you know how old they are?
Anthony wants to know how old you know a sea turtle is, and that's a good question, Anthony. We don't always know. Sometimes we have to look at the size and we can make guesses, but Mary Dell, how could you actually tell how old a turtle is?
Well, we have some wonderful information that has come from nesting beaches. In a number of places in the world, scientists started putting small metal tags on turtles about 30 years ago, and we are still finding these turtles with tags. Now, if you add up the time that it takes for them time to reproduce. In some species, it's 15 years, in others, it's 20 or 30 or even more years. And to that, you add at least 26, 27 years. We know that these turtles are still nesting maybe 67, 68 years after they were hatched.
And there are some scientists, Dr. George Zug, who's at the Smithsonian Institution, he is looking at the shells of the turtles and trying to estimate their age by looking at their shell, sort of how you would look at a tree and count the rings. But we don't know the accuracy of that method yet. And so really there's no good way to look at a sea turtle and be able to tell exactly how old it is. We have Patrick from Wisconsin on the phone. Wisconsin is a long way from Belize. So Patrick, go ahead with your question.
Yes, our second grade class is wondering, where did sea turtles originate from?
Patrick wants to know about the evolution of sea turtles. Reptiles are a very old group of animals. They're in the fossil record very far back before the time of dinosaurs. The oldest fossil sea turtle that we have found is Archelon, which is a large sea turtle. It was up to the size of a small car, and if you go to the website that goes along with this electronic field trip, you'll be able to see a picture of Archelon. But sea turtles came from land turtles that then returned to the ocean, and that sort of diversified their habitat so they weren't in competition with the turtles that were on land. We have Christopher from Michigan on the phone. Christopher, go ahead.
In which of the 5 zones of the pelagic environment do sea turtles live in?
Oh, so Christopher wants to know are sea turtles found in all of the world's oceans?
They're found in all of the world's oceans except for the Arctic Ocean. Leatherbacks get fairly far north because, unlike most reptiles, leatherbacks have an ability to control their internal temperature. So they can get into very warm waters around Alaska or around Nova Scotia. But leatherbacks and other turtles are found in the Atlantic Ocean, the Indian Ocean, the Pacific Ocean, around the world.
We have Sarah on the line. Sarah, go ahead with your question.
I was wondering how long sea turtles have been in existence for.
Sarah wants to know, how long have sea turtles been in existence?
Modern sea turtles have probably been around for about 100 million years, but the ancestors, the very earliest sea turtles, were probably around 150 million years ago.
So sea turtles have been around for a long time. We've looked at the life cycle of sea turtles, and it seems like it's very complicated. But remember, it has worked for turtles for many, many, many years. What we're going to do now is we're going to do our turtle hurdles activity, where our students are going to pretend that they are hatchlings and they will have to make their way down the beach. So let's go and meet our students and talk to them about what they're going to need to do to be able to get down the beach. So we've got them all lined up here. And Spencer, you're going to be a sea turtle hatchling, so what do you need to do?
Get to the sea.
You got to get to the sea, and what's going to be between you and the ocean?
Predators.
There's going to be lots of predators between you and the ocean. Junin, can you think of what are some of the predators of sea turtle hatchlings?
Skunk.
Skunks. What about you, Adler?
Crabs.
Crabs. Nigel?
Sharks.
Sharks. Can you think of anything else, Will?
Seagulls.
Seagulls. So there are lots of predators on the beach and in the water waiting for these hatchlings. So hatchlings, I want you guys to make your way down the beach. Now you can't run, because sea turtle hatchlings can't run. Just want you to walk fast, okay? You're going to have to get past Lincoln, who's a skunk, and you're going to have to get past Kevin, who's a crab. Once you get past them, you're going to have to get past Stacy, who is a grouper. That's a large kind of fish. And then you're going to have to get past Greg, who is a shark. Now, when the predators get you, the predators are going to tap you on the shoulder. When you get tapped by 2 predators, you're dead. And then I want you to sit down where you are, okay? You guys ready? Yeah. All right, is everybody at home ready to start turtle hurdles? All right, let's get going. On your mark, get set, go. Okay, let me get all my hatchlings back over here. Raise your hand if you made it to the ocean. Did everybody make it?
Except me.
Jeremy, who did you get eaten by?
I got eaten by a shark and a skunk.
You got picked off on the land and in the sea. Now, all of our hatchlings made it except for Jeremy. Is that usual for hatchlings?
No.
Is it? What usually happens?
Well, they get eaten because, well, most of them got in the water because there weren't too much predators.
Right, there weren't too many predators on this beach, so the hatchlings were able to make their way down the beach and get to the water. Then they had to face more predators in the water. But what can happen is that if there are more predators, then those hatchlings are picked off by our predators, right? What if there was a hotel built on this beach? That wouldn't be good, would it? That would block the beach from the hatchlings being able to get down the beach. So in some places you will have lots of hatchlings make their way down towards the ocean. In other beaches there'll be too many predators and most of the hatchlings will not make it. All right, so we've talked about the life cycle of sea turtles. And we started to talk a little bit about how scientists study sea turtles, how we track them as they are moving through their life cycles. Let's look at a video now of two of the best ways scientists have to track sea turtles.
For the last 5 to 10 years, scientists from around the world have been putting satellite transmitters on sea turtles. As the turtle moves, data from the transmitter is beamed to a satellite orbiting the Earth. The transmitter is expensive, and here you've seen it being attached by epoxy glue. Costs about $5,000 a unit, and that includes the airtime. But satellite transmitters give detailed information about turtle movements. Another type of very useful tagging system is the metal flipper tag. This is a system first used by scientists 40 years ago when they began studying sea turtles. But this system has been providing data about turtles and turtle populations around the world for a very long time.
In Belize, we recently using the flipper tag. It tells us how long the turtle takes to return back to its nesting ground. We once used satellite tag to study the migration pattern.
So we've talked about the life cycle of sea turtles and how scientists can track sea turtles as they are moving throughout their life cycle. And someone had asked earlier how sea turtles know where they are going. Sea turtles have several cues that they can follow to help them get from place to place. The first thing that sea turtles do when they come out of their nest is they have to make their way to the ocean. And to do that, sea turtles look for the brightest spot on the beach. And Ian, can you tell us where's that brightest spot usually?
The ocean.
It's over the ocean. So sea turtles are looking at the reflection of the moon on the ocean, and they're also, the brightest spot can also be where the horizon and the sea meet together. So they're crawling towards the brightest spot. So their first cue is they are using a light cue to get to the ocean. Before we move to our next cue, let's take another question. Let's have Austin from Indiana go ahead with the question. Austin, go ahead.
Why do you think the sea turtles have survived for so many years when the dinosaurs and giant land turtles have not?
Okay, Austin wants to know how come the sea turtles survived when the dinosaurs did not. But since we don't know exactly what happened to the dinosaurs, it's kind of hard to answer that question. But I think one of the things that helped the sea turtles was that they were in the ocean. So whatever was happening up on land that caused the dinosaurs to go extinct, that may have protected the sea turtles by being in the oceans. Sea turtles are also very well adapted to their habitat. And the more well adapted an organism is to its habitat, the more likely it's not going to go extinct if something were to happen to its environment. But I say that sea turtles have been around for a long time. But if we don't start helping sea turtles, if we don't start protecting them and conserving them, we could see some species of sea turtles go extinct in our lifetime. We have Randolph from Maryland calling. Randolph, go ahead with your question.
How do sea turtles migrate?
Randolph wants to know how sea turtles migrate. Randolph, that's a great question. Let's go ahead and talk about that. We talked about the sea turtles using the cue of the light to get towards the ocean. Then once they get in the ocean, Ian, what do they use next to help them get out towards the open ocean?
The waves.
They use their waves. Ian, why don't you hold on to that for me, okay? So they use waves by swimming into the waves. Has anyone ever been swimming in the ocean? Raise your hand. Yeah, and the waves are really strong, and sometimes they pull you out. Well, these waves pull these little hatchlings out towards the open ocean. So they're swimming into the waves to help them get out. Once they get out to the open ocean, then what happens to them? Ian, do you have any ideas?
Then they use their third cue.
And what's their third cue?
Some scientists think that turtles have a compass in their heads.
All right, so our question from Randolph in Maryland, you wanted to know how the sea turtles are able to migrate. We think that once the sea turtles reach the open ocean, they have an internal compass that starts to work. Spencer is holding a compass for us, and if he can hold that up so the folks at home can see that. Some scientists think that there's a compass inside the turtle's head. Dr. Ken Lohman, who's at the University of North Carolina, has done a lot of research about sea turtles and their ability to detect or to pick up the magnetic field of the Earth and use that to make a map of where they need to go. So let's talk about magnetism a little bit. I have here a magnet, and there's a couple of things we need to know about magnets before we start. Magnets can come in lots of different shapes, but even though they're in different shapes, they still have the same properties. All right, so Ian, what can you tell us about magnets? They have two ends, right? And what are the two ends?
North and South Pole.
Okay, so there are two ends to a magnet. They have two poles, the North Pole and the South Pole. And these poles then can attract each other. What poles attract each other, Ian?
North and South and North.
Right, two different poles, two unlike poles then attract each other. What happens to South and South and North and North?
They repel each other.
They repel each other. What I'd like to do is I'd like to hand these two magnets to Jeremy. Jeremy's going to put the North and South poles together so you can see what happens. All right, they stick together. Now, Jeremy, if you can put the North and North poles together. Okay, and you see them being pushed away. You see them being repelled. So, like poles repel each other, unlike poles attract each other. So those are the things we need to know about magnets. Now, these magnets are magnetized, which means that the atoms inside of them are all lined up in one direction. So this magnet will actually attract other things. If the atoms weren't lined up, then it would not be magnetized. Now, can we see magnetism? Have you ever seen magnetism, Ian?
No.
No, we can't see it. It's invisible. So to help us understand it, I'd like to do this demonstration. And you can do this demonstration back in your classrooms. I'm going to take these two magnets and put them underneath this piece of plexiglass. And then what I'm going to do is I am going to take this shaker. This has iron filings in it. What does iron do?
It makes a very good metal for magnets.
Exactly. So you find iron in magnets, or something like steel has a lot of iron in it, and that's what makes steel magnetized. Okay, so I'm shaking these iron filings on top of this magnet. Ian, what do you see these iron filings doing?
Lying down and standing up.
Okay, so they're forming a pattern, and this pattern you are looking at is magnetism. This is the magnetic field that each of these magnets is giving off. So you are seeing the ways that these magnets are attracting each other and attracting these iron filings. As Ian said, some of them are standing up, other ones are lying down. So these different iron filings have different directions. They also have a different strength. Some of the attraction is stronger than others. So the two things to know about magnetism, about magnetic fields, is they have a specific direction and a specific strength. And some scientists think that sea turtles can detect the differences in the magnetic field. They can tell the iron, they can tell the strength and the intensity and also the direction of the magnetic field. And every time they detect that, they make a mental map. They make a map in their heads, and they can use this map to get back to where they need to go, whether they need to get back to their feeding grounds, whether they need to get to their breeding grounds, whether they're coming back to the very same beach where they hatched maybe 30 years ago. It would be like if you were born in a house that was in Vermont, and as soon as you were born, you had to leave the house, go all the way to California without any roads. And then 30 years later, you would have to go back to the very same house in Vermont. Turtles, we think, can have the same kind of ability, and they are making a map of the Earth's magnetism to be able to help them migrate. Okay, we have more questions, so we'd like to hear from T from Michigan.
Hello, this is Mr. T from Detroit.
T from
I want
Detroit,
to
go
know,
ahead.
once the turtles reach the water, how fast or the speeds get up to for a turtle?
Sea turtles can swim very fast. Leatherbacks have been known to swim up to 20 or 25 miles per hour. Think about it. That's an animal that's 1,000 pounds, maybe. It can swim very fast. They can only do that in short bursts, however. Usually the turtles are swimming much slower than that. We have a call from Wyoming. Leonzo is on the line. Please go ahead with your question.
Why do turtles leave their eggs?
Leonzo wants to know why sea turtles leave their eggs. We've seen footage of the females laying her eggs on the beach, and then she doesn't stay with her eggs. It's a different kind of strategy than other animals. We talked about birds and the way that birds lay their eggs, and then they will sit on the nest to incubate the eggs and then protect the young. What happens with reptiles, most reptiles lay their eggs and then leave their eggs behind. But the difference is that reptiles lay many more eggs than birds do. So for example, the sea turtle can lay 100 eggs at one time, and she may lay as many as 4 or 5 nests in one breeding season. So think about it. She could lay 500 eggs in just 1 year. So there's no way that she could protect all of those eggs. So by laying as many eggs as possible, sea turtles are banking on the fact, they're sort of hoping for the fact, if I can say that some of the hatchlings will survive even without her care. Birds lay fewer eggs, so they feel the need to protect their eggs more. There is one exception to that. Crocodiles, they will lay their eggs, but then the mothers will stay with the nest and they will protect the young. Very different from what sea turtles do. All right, great. If I can get our students to go back, and we're going to get ready for our last segment about conservation, so you guys can go head back over there. And while they are doing that, we want to go to the phone, and we have on the line Dan Evans. Dan Evans, go ahead and go back. Actually, we have on the phone someone from the Caribbean Conservation Corporation.
Yes, hello.
All right, we have Dan Evans from the Caribbean Conservation Corporation. And Dan, if you're there, could you tell us a little bit about what CCC does?
Well, CCC is the world's oldest conservation and research sea turtle group in the world. And we do research efforts, conservation efforts, and try to work with laws to help protect sea turtles and their habitats throughout the Caribbean, especially in Costa Rica and southeast U.S., such as Florida.
Great, Dan. I have two other people that are with me, Dan. We have Marydell Donnelly here from the Ocean Conservancy. Marydell has a question for you.
All right.
Dan, we've worked together for a number of years. I'm really impressed with the satellite telemetry work that you've done in Costa Rica. Can you tell us what some of the specific advantages are of having the data from the satellite transmitters as far as promoting conservation is concerned?
Well, the advantages of having the satellite tracking data versus the sort of the original method of tracking turtles with the metal flipper tag is that we almost get basically real-time movements of these turtles. And so that we can see not only where turtles end up, which the metal tags help us find out, but we can also find out how they get from their nesting grounds to their feeding grounds in the example of the turtles we're tracking. And we're able to put those tracks, actually map those movements and put them up on our website as part of our educational program. And it sort of opens the door for anybody who's interested in sea turtle research or conservation or education to be able to follow along and see what these turtles are doing.
So Dan, while you were talking, our students were looking at an actual track that from your website of a specific sea turtle. So these are the kinds of tracks that you can go to the CCC website and see. And it gives you very detailed information about where these turtles are going. The way to conserve sea turtles is to conserve their habitat, and so these satellite transmitters let us know exactly where the turtles are going. Dan, I also have here Kevin Andrewen, who's from Gales Point Manatee here in Belize, and Kevin would like to ask you a question as well.
My question is, I want to know how many different countries do the turtle from Costa Rica migrate to, the one with the satellite tag?
Well, the ones that we've tracked with satellite transmitters have ended up off the coast of Panama, off the coast of Nicaragua, Honduras, and even off your own coast in Belize. Now we know from the metal tag returns that they go to countries all throughout the Caribbean. They tend to go to Nicaragua.
All right, Dan, I'd like to thank you for joining us here during our program. And students, if you want to find out more information about the work of the CCC, you can go to their website. Their website is linked to the website that goes along with our electronic field trip. We have a question now from Becky from Washington. Becky, can you go ahead? Okay, Becky, we're going to need you to call back in with your question. We lost your question. We were talking about the cues of sea turtles. When we talked about one of the cues, the first cue that the sea turtles use is looking for the light, the brightest spot on a beach. When we were here in August, we saw hatchlings coming out of their nest. Those nests were all the way down the beach. They were down the beach where those thatched huts are. And all the turtles had to do was go straight to the water. But what happened instead was, because it was at night, the lights to this house were on. And the hatchlings went from all the way down the beach, all the way across the beach up to the house. And were crawling around underneath the light underneath the house. So if there is the wrong kind of lighting on a beach, the hatchlings will crawl to that, to whatever is the brightest spot. Their instincts tell them to go to the brightest spot, no matter what that is. So what we had to do is we had to take the hatchlings, take them back to their nests, and then we used our flashlights to guide the hatchlings to the sea.
Daylight come and me want go home. Come, Mr. Tallyman, tally me banana. Daylight come and me want go home. Come, Mr. Tallyman, tally me banana. Daylight come and me want go home. Live 6 foot, 7 foot, 8 foot bunch. Daylight come and me want go home. 6 foot, 7 foot, 8 foot bunch. Daylight come and me want go home.
All right, so those are the hatchlings making their way down the beach and to the water. We have some more phone calls that we would like to answer. We have Aaron from Michigan on the line. Aaron, go ahead with your question.
Hi,
Hi, I wanted to know who discovered the sea turtle.
Ooh, Aaron has a very good question. Who discovered sea turtles? I can tell you about the Kemp's Ridley, Aaron. People knew about them, but it took a scientist whose name was David Kemp, if I'm correct, Mary Dell, who came and found the large nesting sites of these Kemp's Ridleys, and that's how they got their name. Up until then, it was a mystery. It was a riddle where these animals were going to lay their eggs and to reproduce. And it was this turtle biologist who found them and that the turtle was then named after. But what about other species of sea turtles?
Sea turtles have been around, of course, long before man was on the planet Earth. And when we look at some of the archaeological remains, particularly here in the Caribbean, we find that people living here 1,000 years ago, maybe even 3,000 years ago, were using turtles. So turtles were here first, and then we found them, we discovered them. At the time that Columbus came to the Caribbean, we think that there were probably 40 million green turtles in this region. That's certainly not the case today, but with any luck, we hope to be able to increase the numbers that we do have.
We have Dave from Indiana on the line. Dave, please go ahead with your question.
Yes, we would like to know, do they have eyelids? And what is the tail for? Thank you.
Dave wants to know if sea turtles have eyelids, and he also wants to know what are the tails for.
If you look at a book of reptile anatomy, you will see that reptiles, for the most part, have tails. The anatomy of a sea turtle tail is one which includes, particularly for the males, some of the reproductive apparatus that it needs. Yes, sea turtles have eyelids, and it protects their eyes from salt. Another thing that we didn't talk about today is that sea turtles have salt glands. This is something important to help them get the salt out of their systems.
So remember, the sea turtles are living in this salty marine environment, so they're constantly taking in salt that they then have to get rid of. Sometimes if you see a picture of a female sea turtle on the beach, it will look like she's crying, but really what's happening is the salt is being released from those salt glands. All right, we have Amber from Maryland on the line. Amber, go ahead with your question.
How do sea turtle babies get out of the eggs?
Amber wants to know how the babies get out of their eggs.
You see a picture of a sea turtle hatchling, you'll see that it has a little tiny tooth on the end of its nose. And this is called the egg tooth. It helps them to open up the egg and to crawl out. As Dottie had said earlier, sea turtle hatchlings need to work together to get out of their nest. Remember, the floor of a sea turtle nest is probably this far down in the sand. So by all working together as they come out of their eggshells, they can raise the floor of the nest and have the ceiling of the nest come down, and so they all move to the top of the beach. They stay until it gets cool, and then they scamper out in the evening.
So as Meridell said, they use their egg tooth to get out of their shell. That's one of the things that reptiles have evolved. They have a special kind of shell that has a protective covering, and then they have special fluid inside that helps nourish the hatchlings. But I have here some of the remains of shells that hatchlings have come out of, and you can see there are bits and pieces left over by the time the hatchlings come out of their shell and they come out of their nest. We have a question from Michigan now. We have Jesse on the line. Jesse, go ahead.
Hi, I want to know what the smallest full-grown sea turtle is that has ever been recorded.
Jesse wants to know what's the smallest sea turtle that's ever been recorded.
Well, the smallest sea turtle would be a hatchling. If you mean what's the smallest adult turtle, that would probably be an olive ridley.
We have Zane from Wyoming now. Please go ahead with your question.
Do male turtles fight over female elk like you do in spoilers?
Do male turtles fight over female sea turtles when they're at the breeding grounds?
Well, Dottie and I have some friends who are researchers down in Australia where they have a great number of green turtles. And apparently there is a lot of male competition that goes on during the season. Apparently the males are trying to nip each other and to push the other males away from the female. That was a great question.
That was a very good question. Okay, we'd like to take a look at our underwater camera now. Again, we can look at some of this habitat that these sea turtles are using off the coast of Belize. Dr. Lou Earhart, who is a turtle biologist in Florida, has put tags on sea turtles that have come up on that beach. And those tags have been returned here in Belize. So what is happening is those Florida turtles are using the beaches in Florida for nesting places, and then they are using the feeding grounds here in Belize for their food. And that's what you will be seeing. You see with this underwater camera is the seagrass beds, the feeding areas for these turtles here in this area. We have another question on the line. We have Heather from Maryland. Heather, can you go ahead?
What are the dangers for sea turtles?
Heather would like to know about the dangers for sea turtles. Heather, that's great. We'd like to talk about the threats of sea turtles. There are natural threats and there are human threats. And we've talked about some of the natural threats already. Things like skunks and raccoons and jaguars and crabs and birds that are on the beach. Plus the large fish like the sharks that are in the water. When a sea turtle is full grown, really its only predator is a shark. And you can sometimes see a sea turtle that has a bite out of its shell or it has lost a flipper to a shark. But there are many, many more dangers to sea turtles that are from humans than there are from these natural predators. Mary Del Donnelly has been studying sea turtles and sea turtle conservation for almost 20 years now. What are some of the biggest threats to sea turtles that you have seen?
20 years ago, we probably thought that the problems with fisheries, the shrimp fishery and some of the others, were the greatest threat to turtles. We also recognize, though, that the loss of important nesting habitat because of beach development or erosion and the degradation or the damage to the marine habitat is a very big problem for turtles as well. So those of us working on sea turtle conservation are trying to address these issues. We need people around the world to help us do it because, as I think has been pointed out during this show a number of times, sea turtles are migratory. If we protect them in one area but not in another, to the other areas that they go to, we're not going to be able to save them in the long run.
Kevin has done a lot of work with sea turtles here in Belize and Gales Point Manatee. What are some of the biggest threats to sea turtles in Gales Point Manatee?
Well, some of the biggest threats we face, one is threat erosion, two is the human, which is the chimp trawlers just keep on catching turtles, dig up their grass bed. The next thing is that the raccoon and the skunks in Gales Point are serious threat because they eat up the eggs.
We've also pollution on the beaches is a large threat to sea turtles. Our students have gone out earlier and they collected some of the trash that you will find here on this beach. The only thing that there is on this island right now is this field station. So there aren't people here to pollute this beach. What's happening is the pollution is being brought in from other places around the world by the waves and the currents and the tides. And you'll find things like fishing line, fishing nets, plastic, old flip-flops, lots of old bottles on the beach. These all damage the beach and make it harder for the sea turtles to have a nice, safe place to be able to lay their eggs. Okay, we have more phone calls. We have Becky from Washington.
Yeah, I was wondering how many pounds of pressure can a sea turtle's shell take before it cracks?
Becky wants to know how many pounds of pressure a sea turtle can take before its shell starts to crack. The leatherbacks are the sea turtles that can dive the deepest. We talked about the leatherback having a slightly different shell from the other kinds of sea turtles. The leatherback is named for its leathery shell, right? And this shell is more compressible. This allows it to dive deeper. Leatherbacks also have the ability to collapse their lungs when they are diving. So they're the ones that can go down to 2,000 feet in search of food. I don't know how many pounds of pressure that is down at 2,000, but it's a lot. We have Israel from California on the line. Please go ahead.
Where did turtles get their name from?
Where do turtles get their name from? I don't know where the word turtle came from. Do you, Marydell?
I don't, but all animals in the world and most of the plants and most of the animals have scientific names which have been given to them by taxonomists. Taxonomists spend a lot of time figuring out the relationships between animals, and then that makes a difference. And they are able to name them depending on their relationships.
All right, so we have met Kevin and Lincoln from Gales Point Manatee. We've talked about the research and the conservation they are doing in Gales Point Manatee. Really, the best way to conserve sea turtles, as we said, is to conserve their habitat, and for local organizations, for local groups to protect them in their local areas. Kevin is now going to show you some video and talk to you about the ways that they protect sea turtles and their nests on the beach in Gales Point Manatee.
Okay, in Gales Point, what we do to protect our sea turtle, first we go out and search for the nest. If we found the nest, we usually put a date mark it. Second, we go search for the eggs by chopping or pouring down in the ground. After we find it, we usually dig 2 feet to see exactly where the eggs is located around the edge. Next thing we do after that, we get up the wire mesh and then we put it over the eggs, and then we cover it with either sand or little sticks, and as the date mark is on it, we monitor it daily to see that no predators get down to get the eggs.
Thank you, Kevin. We really appreciate the hard work that the people of Gales Point Manatee are doing to protect sea turtles here in Belize, and we've been very fortunate to have them with us today to talk about these efforts. We have more phone calls we'd like to get to. We have Chris from Michigan on the line. Go ahead with your question, Chris.
What happens if you catch a sea turtle? What are the consequences?
Chris wants to know about if you catch a sea turtle, what are the consequences? In many parts of the world, Chris, it is illegal for you to have anything to do with the sea turtle. In the United States, for example, because they are protected by the Endangered Species Act, it is illegal for anybody to go anywhere near a sea turtle. You can't even go up and touch a sea turtle, let alone kill it or take or use any of the sea turtle for parts. You also can't travel to another country and buy something made out of a sea turtle and bring it back to the United States. So there are laws, international laws, that are to protect sea turtles. But what needs to happen is these laws need to be enforced, and people need to know that when they travel to other countries, even if they are able to buy these products made out of tortoiseshell or a stuffed turtle, it is against the law for them to do that, and they should not promote that kind of industry. I have been up close with sea turtles in the wild, and I will tell you that they are very powerful animals. They have those very strong flippers, are very powerful, and they can do some damage as they smack you with them, and you certainly don't want to get your fingers caught in a sea turtle's mouth, because again, those sharp jaws and that almost beak-like mouth can be very painful. We have William from Wyoming on the line. Go ahead, William.
I want to know how I can help sea turtles even though I'm way in Wyoming.
That's a great question. Marydell, what can you do in Wyoming to help sea turtles?
I think that anybody interested in turtles should do everything they can to learn more about them. I'm hoping that some of the participants in our show today will grow up to be sea turtle scientists and biologists. But there are other things that you can do. If you know that there is a problem, you can write a letter. Young people around the country helped to establish a wonderful sea turtle refuge in Florida called the Archie Carr Refuge. Another group of students in Suffolk County, New York, convinced their legislators to have a ban on the release of helium balloons. And this has happened in California as well. Join a conservation organization, support sea turtle work. And for those of you that live near the coast or waterways, on September the 20th, my organization, the Ocean Conservancy, is conducting an international coastal cleanup to get debris off the beaches.
What happens with these helium balloons is once they are released and they deflate, then it becomes plastic that's floating around in the ocean. Sea turtles mistake that for food. They eat it. It then gets stuck in their intestines, and the animals will basically starve to death. So there are lots of things you can do to help sea turtles. I encourage you to go to the website that goes along with this electronic field trip to find out more, and you can also get links to the Ocean Conservancy and the Caribbean Conservation Corporation. All right, we've been staying here on Calabash Key. Again, this is the field station for the Institute of Marine Studies, part of the University of Belize. They've graciously allowed us to be here for the last 10 days. We'd like to show you what this field station looks like and where we've been staying. So this is the field station that we've been staying at for the last week, and I'd like to thank the University of Belize, Eden Garcia, who's the director of the field station here. I'd certainly like to thank all of you who have called in with your great questions. If you want to get more information, please visit our website. I'd like to thank all of our students who are here today with us in Belize for participating. I'd like to thank the producers of the show, the Smithsonian Environmental Research Center, and Ball State University, and a special thanks to our sponsor, the Best Buy Children's Foundation. Next year, there will be more electronic field trips for you to participate in. You can see the schedule of these electronic field trips. They're also brought to you by the Best Buy Children's Foundation. And again, you can get more information about them on the Ball State Insight Distance Learning website. I'd like to thank our crew, our production crew, that has done an amazing job getting all of our equipment here. It was sent to us by UPS. And I'd like to show you the production tent where they have been sending the signal out, handling all of your phone calls and giving us all here direction. So again, I'd like to thank everybody for participating in Where the Land and Sea Intertwine, studying sea turtles here in Belize. I'd like to thank our visitors from Gales Point Manatee for talking to us about their sea turtle work. I get everybody to wave goodbye to the folks at home, and then go ahead and you can run in the water. Thank everybody, and goodbye from Belize.